All right. Hello, hello. I've been told my assistance was needed, so I am here to offer assistance talking about the quadratic equation. So, let's first talk about what a quadratic equation represents, right? In eighth grade, we learned a lot about linear equations, right? That's if you have a coordinate plane like this and you have just a line like that. That's a linear equation. We wrote that in the form of y equals mx plus b, where m was our slope and b was our y-intercept, which is where our line touched the y-axis. Okay? Now, what a quadratic equation is a quadratic equation is written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And this represents a parabola. A parabola is a shape that looks like that. It looks like a U, or a negative parabola where your A is negative will be like an upside down one. It's like a sad face, right? It's feeling negative, so it's sad. This top one is feeling positive, so it's happy. Okay? That's what you're looking at when you're looking at parabolas. So, when it gives you an equation, like for example, this first one right here, x squared plus 9 equals 6x. Okay? We need everything to be on the left. We need our equation to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? So we're going to have to use our standard algebra rules to move this over. So x squared plus 9 equals 6x. Okay? Now, if we want to get everything over the one side of the equation, we're going to do the classic. We're going to draw our fence. Okay? We want everything to be on one side of the fence. So let's do this. Let's move this 6x by subtracting 6x from both sides. Okay? Because remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. 6x minus 6x, that cancels out. This 6x cannot combine with anything up here because remember what this is. We're looking for like terms. A like term, I know I'm hitting you with a lot of definitions that we learned over the course of a year, so I'm going to try to slow it down a little bit. But a like term has the same variable and the same exponent. Okay? So while this has an x and this has an x, there's an exponent of 2 here while there's no exponent here. So they can't combine. So how are you going to write this? X squared minus 6x plus 9 equals, well, we canceled everything else out on the right side. So we're just going to say it equals 0 because there's nothing left. And in order to properly do a quadratic equation, you want it to equal 0. Okay? I don't know if they give you access to computers there or if they give you access mainly to Desmos there. If they do, I could show you how to do this easily on Desmos. But I'm assuming they don't. So let's talk about how you could solve this. There's two things you could do. You could either A, factor it, which is something that we're going to cover a lot, probably in your 10th grade year. Or B, there's the quadratic formula, which again will be something we cover in 10th grade probably. However, factoring can't be done easily on all things. Mainly if you would get an answer that would end up as a fraction or a decimal, it becomes significantly more difficult. However, the quadratic formula will always work the same way, right? It will always work. It's not always going to be pretty, but it will always work. So let's talk about the quadratic formula. Okay. The quadratic formula is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There's a little song you could look up on YouTube. I'm sure you could find it easily. That helps you remember it. It goes to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. You know, the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'm sure if you search quadratic formula song, you can find it. And that helps you remember. Songs like that will stick in your head for years. Is it cringe? Yes. But does it help you remember? Also, yes. Okay? So, we established A, B, and C way up here when we talked about what's in a quadratic equation. Okay? So now we're going to go to our equation, and we're going to identify what A, B, and C are. So, A is the coefficient of x squared, the number in front of x squared. In this case, we don't have one. So we assume, if there's not one there, we assume it to be 1. B is the coefficient of your x term. That would be negative 6. C is your constant right here. That would be 9. Okay? Now we're going to have to plug all of this into the quadratic formula. So here we go. I'm going to move over here so we have a little more room. Negative b. So negative, our b is negative 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 6 squared. Remember to always use parentheses when you substitute in, minus 4 times a times c. All right. All over 2 times a, which is 1. So first step, identify your a, b, and c. A, your coefficient to x squared. B, your coefficient to your x term. C is your constant. Okay? Now let's figure this out. So negative 6, that's going to end up being positive 6. Plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 36. Okay? All over 2 times 1 is 2. 36 minus 36 is 0. The square root of 0 is 0. Okay? All over 2. Just make sure I have this right. Yeah, I do. All right. I had to double check. I had to quickly factor it in my head to make sure I have this all right. Okay. So if this was any number besides 0, we would have 2 different answers. Because you would have an answer of 6 plus whatever you get out of the radical and 6 minus whatever you get out of the radical. But because this is all just 0, it's just going to be 6 over 2. 6 over 2 simplifies to 3. So x equals 3 is how you write your answer. So, as I said, the quadratic formula will work every time. Won't always be pretty, but it will work every time. And I want to stress that if you don't get this right now, that's fine. Okay? This right here is late algebra 1, early geometry algebra 2. Okay? So, you have not learned this yet. You did not learn this in 8th grade. You won't learn this till like the way end of 9th grade, probably even in the 10th grade. Okay? So, the fact that you're even trying this is commendable. I want you to remember that. Let's try another one. That one has a fraction, so that's ugly, so we're not going to do it. All right. So let's look at this one. An equation is shown what values of x make the equation true. So we're going to have two answers here. So, first thing we need to check. Is our equation in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0? Yes. We don't have to do any algebra. We don't have to move anything over. This is already where we want it to be. Okay? Next step that I want you to follow. Identify your A, B, and C. A is your coefficient of your x squared. So in this case, it would be 2. B, the coefficient of your x term. Here it would be -5. Make sure you catch the negative. C, your constant, is -3. Okay? So now, we're going to use the quadratic formula. Okay? The quadratic formula is -b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. That's a terrible A, Deets. Come on. All right. So, remember, you always want to use parentheses in your substitutions, because otherwise you'll run into an issue like with this b here, where this is supposed to be -b, and your b is already negative, and you run the risk of not canceling out the negative as you should. Always use parentheses on substitutions. So -b, our b is -5, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So -5 squared. And that's the other reason you have to use parentheses. Remember, if you don't use parentheses here, when you go to put this in your calculator and you put in just -5 squared like this, it's going to square this first and then apply the negative, and it will give you the answer of -25, which it's not. You have to put it in parentheses so it properly accounts for the negative, which will give you +25. Okay? All right. Minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is -3. Good habit to get into. Make sure your square root covers the entire thing. I like to draw this little vertical line at the end of the square root so I know that that's where the square root ends. So that if I put anything after that square root, there's no question about what's under the radical. It ends there. All over 2 times A. Your A is 2. All right. So let's do this. -5. That makes +5. Okay? Plus or minus the square root. -5 squared would be +25. -4 times 2 would be -8. -8 times -3 would be +24. Okay? So -4 times 2 is -8 times -3 equals 24. So that we can try to follow along with that. All over 2 times 2 is 4. All right, next step, we have to take care of the radical. So our 5 stays. 25 plus 24 is 49, all over 4. So now here's where we get to the tricky part. Remember square roots. Square roots are are what number you can multiply by itself to get that number. So the square root of 49, what do you multiply by itself to get 49? 7. 7 times 7 is 49. So the reason that they have this plus minus here is because, remember, square roots have two different answers. They have the positive, which is just 7, but also the negative root. Negative 7 times negative 7 also makes positive 49. Okay? So this is 5 plus or minus 7 over 4. We're almost there. Okay? So now this is going to split. Okay? On one side, we're going to split this up. We have 5 plus 7 over 4, and we have 5 minus 7 over 4. So we're going to have two separate answers. Okay? 5 plus 7 is 12 over 4, which is equal to 3. 5 minus 7 is negative 2 over 4, which is equal to negative 1/2. These are both perfectly valid answers. If you plug these back into the equation, you will get 0. So you put x equals 3 and x equals negative 1/2. Okay? Take it step by step. Take your time. Don't rush. Okay? I know we all hate showing work. I know we hate it. But take it one step at a time. At least while you're learning it. Once you become better at it, once you feel like you've started to master it, then you can kind of not have to show every step. But here, I would show every step. Okay? Do you want to do one more? Oh my heavens. Oh my heavens. Alright, sure. Let's do one more. Alright, 16x squared plus 10x minus 27. Let's rewrite this over here because we're going to have to do some algebra. Equals negative 6x plus 5. Alright. So remember, I said we want to make sure that all of our stuff gets on the same side of the equal sign because we need this to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So let's make this equal 0. So we're going to get rid of everything on the right side. So we're going to get rid of this 6x. To get rid of the 6x, we have to move it to the opposite side of the fence. Remember, opposite side, opposite sign. So instead of minus 6x, we're going to add 6x to both sides. 10x and 6x are like terms because they both have x with no exponent. If you wanted to save paper, you could do the other movement at the same time, but for the sake of learning and review, I'm going to take it one step at a time. 10x plus 6x is 16x. Minus 27 equals 5. Now we have to get rid of this 5. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. And this is, I can already tell now this is going to get messy. 16x squared plus 16x. Negative 27 minus 5 is negative 32 equals 0. Let me go see if I could quickly pull up studio mode here. Calculator. Okay. Because I have a feeling we're going to need this. Uh-oh. This is why you never do this on the fly. Always be prepared. My God, how big is this? All right. So we're going to have to set this up. And I'm sorry this is taking so long. My calculator is not cooperating with me. Because this is going to get to some big numbers. So I'm wanting to get the calculator to show up on the screen here. There we go. So I'm just going to have to do a little bit of editing magic. Move that over. Move this over. Perfect. All right. There we go. All right. So we've now reached a ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So like I said, our next step, let's identify a, b, and c. A is your coefficient to your x squared, that is 16. B is your coefficient to your x, that is also 16. C is your constant, negative 32. And now it's time to work with some big numbers. The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so negative b, negative 16, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. Oh my heavens. All over 2 times 16. Okay. So negative 16. That's nice and easy. Plus or minus. Let's work out this square root. 16 squared. So let's go to our calculator. 16 squared equals 256. Negative 4 times 16 times negative 32 all equals, it's a big number, 2048. All over 2 times 16 is 32. All right. Told you we're working with big numbers now. 256 minus 2048. 1792. Negative 16 plus or minus 1792. The square root of 1792. And let the calculator do all the heavy lifting for you. Something went wrong here. Hold on. Hold on a second. It's 4 times A. Oh, that should be plus. That should be plus 2048. That's why. I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. You can't have a square root of a negative number, at least at this level of math. 2304. And that's why I talk about how important it is to make sure you're keeping track of your negatives, because see, even I lost the fact that this negative would cancel out this negative and make a positive. So this would be plus 2048. So let's go back again. You can even put this all into the calculator at once if you want to. 16 squared minus 4 times A times C Bam, 2304. Just put it all in at once if that helps. All right, so now we got to find the square root. So remember, if you're using the TI-30, which I imagine they might be, second, the x squared button gives you a square root. 2304, you got 48. So this is negative 16 plus or minus 48 over 32. So now we've done all that. We've worked with big numbers. We got down to 3 smaller numbers, right? We're going to split this problem into 2. Negative 16 plus 48 over 32. And negative 16 minus 48 over 32. Okay, so negative 16 plus 48 equals 32 over 32. Anything over itself is equal to 1. Negative 16 minus 48 is negative 64 over 32. So you divide that by 32, that's going to be negative 2. X equals negative 2. Okay. But application is not responding. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay, well, your answers, if you could still see the question, would just be 1 and negative 2. Okay. It appears I've lost internet, so that's not great. But, so, remember, okay, go back, look at the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay? And again, if you're having trouble with this, that is fine. Okay? So, if you need more help, ask Coley to text me or whatever, or email me. So remember my email, brian.dietz@explorersacademy.st.com. So we're going to put that, yeah, I don't care. Put that right there. Nice big font. Okay? If you need me, message me. I'm here for you. All right? Good luck at Purdue. I know you'll do your best. I look forward to seeing you all next school year.